Hi, it's Warren Huart here. Hope you're doing marvelously well. We're going to talk about acoustic treatment in your home studio. I'm here with my friend Barry Rudolph. Hi,
Thanks
Barry.
for having me.
Thank you for being here. So Barry, we're in a unique position. We're truly blessed because Barry, not only is he a producer, an engineer, and a mixer, he also teaches this exact subject. He teaches acoustic treatment. So we're going to be able to talk to Barry about what he has done in his own home environment. This is his living room, and this is his dining room area of his living room. Mm-hmm. It's I would say, not going to say average, but I suppose it's a normal house. This is a kind of a normal environment. Yep. So this is a perfect opportunity for us to ask somebody who understands acoustics what they have done themselves, given the information and the understanding that Barry has in his own environment. Okay, Barry, so we're in your living room, dining room.
Yep, X-Thing.
And I've heard music in here when we interviewed you a couple of weeks ago. Mm-hmm. We heard stuff. It sounded amazing. Mm-hmm. I really enjoyed the experience. We were off camera, unfortunately, but picking up with lapel mics anyway wouldn't have really given it justice. But there was a whole area around here where it just sounds beautiful and flat. And it was quite remarkable what all of these panels and the acoustic treatment you've done in here. And it really does make the whole process enjoyable. Yeah. You know, whether you're writing songs, whether you're mixing, production, whatever it is. So can you sort of lead us into what you've done here?
Sure. First thing I did was I have a plan and I drew a diagram, a dimensionally accurate plot or room diagram of this space, measured the width, the ceiling height, the length, and I drew a diagram in it so that I could, on paper, I could plan where the speakers are going to go, where the desk is going to go, where the equipment racks, where the chair, the listening position, right about here. And so that you can look at that on paper and know how big all this stuff is. The best sound you can get out of a room is a rectangular room. You want to load the rectangular room lengthwise. So the speakers would be left and right, and they're going to load the room or play down the room lengthwise, as opposed to playing down like from this side.
Right.
So you get the best bass response that way. The fact is, in small rooms, you have, they're too small to accurately, they can't reproduce the low frequencies very well at all, because the dimensions of the room are shorter than the wavelength of the lowest frequencies. For example, a 50 hertz wave is over 22 feet.
Wow. What's a 60, which is like a typical kick drum?
60, I could calculate that for you, but it's
16, 18 feet, something like that?
Well, 50 hertz is 22 and a half feet. So 60 is going to be a little shorter, 18, 19 feet.
Right.
So for example, the low E on a bass guitar is 41 hertz, fundamental on an open E string. So
right.
You get an idea that what happens is the bass wave is too long and it hits a boundary, a wall, and then reflects back on itself. And where it reflects back and adds to the incoming wave, in other words, in phase, you get a peak. And where it comes back and is out of phase, you get a dip. And those are called room modes of vibration or room modes. So at the listening position, the goal in a small studio is to try to make this position, this area, as flat as you can. The rest of the room, you can't really be concerned with. So back on the couch, and this is kind of true in most control rooms, people try to get an accurate picture from way back there, and what are you going to hear back there? A lot of bass, probably. So the listening position lengthwise in the room, you want to put it midway in the width, exactly 50%, so that you are on axis, the center line of the width dimension, and you now can use your, what they call the magic triangle to determine your listening position. The triangle should be the length, the distance between the two speakers should be the same distance out to your head.
That makes sense.
Just behind your head.
So an equilateral triangle.
Right. So your head is about here, and so that triangle, that 60-degree angle will be up just behind your head, about like that.
So it's going past your ears.
Yeah, just past your head.
And then tweeter height?
Yeah, you can have, tweeter height is good, yeah. These are ribbon tweeters, and so they're pretty wide vertical dispersion. They're pretty like that. So yeah, you could be head height. I have them aimed if you were to sit like this, you could see they're about head height.
People have told me 40, 41 inches. Is there really a preference?
So the distance?
No, height of the tweeters.
Depends on how big a person you are, too.
Right. No, that's good. I'm glad that there's not a specific one.
No. There is some, the ideal distance between the speakers, that would be measured from the center of the speaker to that center, is 67.5.
67.5.
That's one of the, something.
So while we're on speakers, do you have a theory or ideas about what is kind of a minimum speaker for like a room of this size? We're saying 9 by 12.5. Now, is there sort of a minimum driver? I mean, if you don't have a theory, I understand, but I know people ask this stuff all the time.
The most, these are 9-inch Adams. The reason that I use a subwoofer is these days people come in and they want to hear it bump. They want to hear a big low-end footprint, so I use a sub. You don't have to, but it's mainly for people that want to hear it bump like that in the mix. So the minimum, I would say, on a room like this would be like 8-inch.
8-inch.
Like an 8-inch KRK or 8-inch Mackie or 8-inch, these are 9-inch, 8-inch Yamahas or some.
So like an 8-inch and like, we're talking about 9 by 12.
We're talking about the woofer, yeah.
Yeah, in a 9 by 12 room.
Yeah.
So for the smaller speakers like the 6, which are very popular, little 6 powered, what kind of room size would you say that would benefit?
They would work all right in here. It's just that you can't expect to get the sound pressure level that you can from a bigger speaker, like an 8 or a 10. If you're attempting to play it loud, like really push some air, it's not going to happen with a 6-inch speaker.
Right. Okay, so we got proper speaker positioning. My 67.5 is the ideal. Not too close to the back wall. Is there a minimum?
Yeah, I'm probably pretty much there, 21, 22 inches from here and here. Might mention this idea of symmetry. If you were to measure this room, and this is another use for your room plot, is that you can figure out that this distance from this speaker to this wall is the same as that distance from that speaker to that wall, and they're both the same distance, and that's about symmetry. And you have to enforce symmetry in your studio so that your acoustic space, your acoustic on this side is the same on this side. If you notice, everything is mirror image here. They're all these panels, the curtains. There's absorption behind the curtains. All of that is the same on both sides, complete symmetry. And that way you're not having a different acoustic properties of the room are not changing from this side to that side. And that holds up your stereo imaging. All right, so in your room plot, you've already measured your room. That's the first thing you're going to do is measure your space. So this would be the length, and this would be the width, and then you would measure the ceiling height. So the length dimension is important because you're going to fire your speakers lengthwise down the room. Left and right speaker are going to be at one end, and you're going to fire down the room lengthwise. You get the best bass response when you do that. Along the way, you're going to measure and then divide into a 25% position, a 50%, 75, and then the back of your room. We'll call this the back of the room right here. Once you have that 50%, some rules. First of all, the speakers should be in front of the 25% measurement. Then your desk can be in and around in front of that 25, in front of the speakers, of course. And then about here is going to be the 38%, what they call the 38% rule, maximizes the listening position lengthwise in the room. Where the 38%, draw a line over it to the 50% of the width dimension becomes your listening position. And I have a mark on the floor where I put my measurement microphone. Well, the 38% rule is just one of these rules that maximizes the listening position in the lengthwise dimension of the room.
So it's essentially slightly over 1/3 of the distance from the back, from the front wall, sorry.
Yeah. Front, down the lengthwise,
Okay, so we would go, so basically 38%, slightly over 1/3 of your front wall to your back wall would be here, and then 50% between this wall and this wall, and you'd end up
with
here.
Your listening position.
Your best listening position. So 38% back wall
front
to here, and then from side to side, exactly halfway, which that's the most logical part.
So now, So now that doesn't mean that you're not going to move your head back and forth. You may have to move this a little bit.
Right.
It's not written in
Okay.
stone that you must, it may sound better. Like if you sit here and listen and you move your head forward and back, you're going to get a different kind of bass response. And also when your head is higher and lower, standing, you get a little different thing. It's not so bad anymore. It used to be a lot worse.
Right.
Between sitting and standing. So.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, so we've got a back wall. We've come 38% to here, and we're 50-50. Now we're in this seating position here. What do we have going on above us here, and why?
Okay, so there being an 8-foot ceiling, we have a tremendous room mode issue, axial room mode, floor to ceiling. And these help to absorb the frequency, that axial room mode frequency, and its harmonics. So these are bass traps that I've hung from the front lower down closer to the speaker, so there's more airspace on the front. On the side here, these curved are also bass traps. They actually they're hybrid. They are the surface, the thin veneer surface, works as a diffuser, a convex diffuser, and then the inside are filled with absorptive material. They're also placed at the 90-degree wall to ceiling boundary where the sound pressure is greatest at boundaries. So these are absorbing bass and they're diffusing the high frequencies back down at the listening position.
Wonderful. Okay, so dumb questions. Is part of what this doing is the irregularity as well? Because I see you have two panels, you have a space. You have space here, you have stuff here. I mean, I'm not an expert like you on this, so is that also part of the beauty is having things?
Yes, the gap in between the panels works better than no gap.
Okay.
Because actually, like the ones in the corners, which are...
I was wondering about the gap at the back there as well. Thank you for reminding me.
This gap or?
No, this one here, when we were talking about the speakers.
Yeah. These are two absorber panels with diffusive front surfaces, and they are straddling that 90-degree corner and acting as a bass trap. The corners or any boundary, especially in the corners where you have two boundaries meeting together, you have a tremendous buildup of the pressure wave and sound. So that's where you'd want to have bass traps. That's the function of the bass trap. The foam one on the floor is a pressure zone trap. It's just absorptive foam in that area. These are straddling the corner and also absorbing low frequencies, as well as the front surface diffusing. And that's the absorption material, like behind the curtain, same kind of thing. It's absorption to absorb those low frequencies. The goal is not to lose bass in the room, but to flatten out the dips and peaks in the response in the room. You can never get it perfect, but at least you're not going to have these giant peaks up to 19 dB difference in level at certain frequencies, and you try to flatten it out. So you're going for a flat acoustic response. If you overabsorb in a room, and then you absorb too much of the middle and the high frequencies, then you have this deader space, which is not good to mix in either, because you start brightening everything to get it bright sounding.
Right.
So it's a fine line, a really kind of a careful line. And the reason why I had the floor redone was that I used to have carpet, the same carpet into the area, and it was too dead.